Hey guys, I hope it's going great. In this video, I'll cover up one of the most important question in a web development interview, and it's asked a lot of times. What is the difference between a GET and a POST request? In this video, I'll cover up what a GET request is, what a POST request is, and what are the differences between them. So let's get started. What is a GET request? Think about a GET request to be a request that is only used to download some piece of data. It is only used to get data from a server or an API endpoint, and it's never used to send some data which will be stored in the database. More about GET request is all of the data that you will be sending to the server or the API endpoint can be seen through the URL, which means if the user wants, they can change the URL to whatever they want to be, and that will change the request sent to the server, which also creates this lack of security whenever you are trying to send some sensitive information. I'll show a quick example of how a GET request may look like. So I have this localhost server here and it's sending a GET request, and with the GET request it's sending this parameter of a name. So if I change this parameter, you see it also changes my response to the request, and if I change it more further, it changes the request. So I should be never sending some sensitive information using this GET request. So what exactly is POST request now? Since GET request is not safe for sending sensitive information, and that's why people use POST request to send sensitive information. POST request doesn't rely on the web URL to send data to a server, which means it's a whole lot more safer when you are trying to send some sensitive information to a web server. To distinguish more between GET and a POST request using an example, think about Facebook. So whenever you're trying to log in into Facebook, it always sends a POST request to log you in because your username and your password should not be visible in the URL. Versus whenever you go to someone's profile, it sends a GET request to get that person's profile because you can clearly see the person's profile you are trying to see, and you can change it using the URL. So that's a real life example of a GET and a POST request. To distinguish further between GET and a POST request, a GET request has a smaller limit on the amount of data it can send. Since it uses the URL and every browser has a limit on how much data you can put in the URL, it limits the ability of GET request to send a whole bunch of information in one request. Whereas a POST request, theoretically there is no restriction on how much data you can send. Another big difference is GET request can be cached, which means the response can be stored somewhere and it increases the performance, versus a POST request which is never cached, or ideally it should never be cached. A GET request is only used to retrieve data as I explained in my example, and a POST request can be used to retrieve and add data to a database or a server as well. Ideally, you should use GET request to get some data and a POST request to add some data to a database or a server. And the last point I already covered, when you're trying to send some sensitive information, never ever rely on a GET request to send it. Always use a POST request and some sort of encryption to encrypt the data that you are trying to send, so it's a little bit safer. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks for watching.